Hello everybody, welcome to a very special video today. Up until now, our live stream has not made much appearance on the YouTube channel. Very interesting weather effect going on. Today, however, we're going to change that. It is because of the time and effort of all the fine individuals who choose to spend their precious time hanging out with us on the live stream that I wanted to find some additional way to honor their efforts. So today, we're going to have the first ever Bobby G commentary about the Sacred Hall of Recollection. A brief summary for those who may be unfamiliar. On our Minecraft world here, we love and worship the god of the ocean. In order for us to ensure that the water stays in the ocean and does not flood our dry land, we must offer sacrifice. The sacrifice, of course, in part, comes from the fine folks who hang out with us during the live stream. Oftentimes, a sheep bid will take place where our in-channel currency, called minutes, gets utilized in a way that lets an individual bid for a sheep and ultimately decide its fate. Some folks choose to sanctuary a sheep, allowing it to forever live out its day in peace and harmony. In this situation, of course, the sea god must accept a sacrifice of only time. Alternatively, the winner of a sheep bid also has the ability to sentence it to sacrifice and elevate their status of good fortune in the eyes of the moist deity. In this situation, of course, the god of the ocean receives not only time as a sacrifice, but the blood of a sheep as well. Here we stand before the Sacred Hall of Recollection. The recordings of these events do get held in this building here. Today, we will go calmly visit each shrine, and I will speak my mind about what we see here exactly. Any memories, recollections, or stories I may have, I will express them at this time, in hopes to further honor the individuals who have sacrificed time itself in order to keep our Minecraft world safe. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I have a nice hot cup of mint tea. Delicious, and I think let's go inside, shall we? Sacred gate is opening. And here, of course, we have the hall, where the sacrifices are on the left-hand side, and the sanctuaries are on the right-hand side. And I think what we're going to do is go down the sanctuary line first, and we'll just see how it goes. This is a very interesting sanctuary sheep, the very first one that we've ever done. As time went on, we utilized some software to allow us to keep track of the bidding, but this time, the very first one was before any of that ever took place. Head Sheep combined forces with relive Gamer, and together they put minutes together, some from one account and some from another account, to raise the funds, basically, to save this sheep. And the funds that they were able to raise in this situation was, of course, 1,500 minutes. The very first sanctuary sheep had a very hefty price tag for its day, and they happened to name it OG. And I think that's supposed to be original gangster, but in this case, it's the original sanctuaried sheep. And goodness gracious, ladies and gentlemen, that has gone back all the way to August 11th, 2015. So, a very interesting artifact here. Before there was even an actual process, we still were finding out ways to honor the god of the ocean with either time or sheep. And this one was a joint effort. So, Head Sheep and relive Gamer. Very nice. The next one here, of course, I also do have a memory about. This one here was saved by the GBO Gamer for a very, at the time, hefty price tag of 3,400 minutes. This reminds me of a time back when GBO was one of the people that were hanging out the most, and because of that, of course, he had the most in-channel currency. During the stream, there was a back and forth between who's going to win, are we going to save the sheep, are we going to sacrifice the sheep, and GBO noticed that there was a good number of individuals that were seemingly upset at the thought of a sheep being sacrificed. So, GBO manned up, and he offered 3,400 minutes, which was, I think, everything he had at the time, just in order to make those other individuals happy that a sheep got saved. So GBO really stepped up in this situation. I do remember that. He didn't even necessarily want this sheep, but he did it, I think, for just about everybody else that wanted to make sure a sheep would be saved. And of course, he named it a name of Jake the sheep, chosen by legendary GBO for Sanctuary. I suppose that is what GBO wanted us to have on the sign here. And that was all the way back in August 13th, 2013. So I remember that one quite well. Next one in line here, a lovely little pink sheep, saved by Mr. Benji. And this was a very interesting situation because I'll never forget the name of this one. The price was a moderate price for the time at $23.77, and of course the Sanctuary date was on August 14th, 2015. And as you can even see, ladies and gentlemen, this was before we had a strict process of how to even document this sort of thing. The signs are different from sheep to sheep so far. But the one thing that I remember obviously the most about this, and we've carried it on as a joke ever since between Mr. Benji and I, and even Mr. Skunky, was the name here. Skunky Loves Onions. I think it was all the way back to Mr. Benji and Skunky having a discussion on a TeamSpeak server once about how the different kinds of foods that they really like to enjoy, and they ended up talking for a good 15 minutes, I think, just about onions alone. So that is, of course, where the name Skunky Loves Onions came from, and that one was by Mr. Benji back on August 14th. Very interesting. Yes, and this next pink sheep here is by our good friend Guy Chicago. And in retrospect, this was a good price, almost a steal for Guy Chicago at the time, at a price of only 1,000 minutes. And compared to even, actually, that's the cheapest Sanctuary sheep to date so far in this, in the first 4 that we've had so far. And of course, the sheep name is none other than GC, which I have to believe stands for Guy Chicago. And the Sanctuary date was August 15th, 2015. So it feels as if this week in August was really, I guess a lot of people were feeling generous and they wanted to Sanctuary a lot of sheep. That's like 3 or 4 days right in a row. So this one was from Guy Chicago, and this was back when I think we just met Guy Chicago. So this was a big deal for him, as this was his first sheep that he was able to get. And let me just take a sip of tea here. Delicious mint tea, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing finer when we're recalling all of the wonderful sheep we have here. This was another interesting one. Our buddy Legal Boot 031. He had made it very known that he was out to get a sheep one way or another. It wasn't clear at the time whether or not a sacrifice or a sanctuary would be in the works. But as soon as Legal Boot saved up 2,000 minutes, that happened to be the winning bid here on August 19th, 2015. And this was a very excited win for Mr. Legal Boot. I'll never forget how excited he was to get this one. And he named the sheep something that I'll never forget. He named the sheep, of course, you can see, Sheer Habit. And this comes from back when we used to open up every live stream with, well, you haven't seen it in this video, but we have a very big sheep pen where all of these sheep come from. And we would open up every live stream by clipping the wool off of the sheep and storing their multicolored wool just in case we ever needed it for anything. And one day, somehow it came up that out of sheer habit, we were going to shear the sheep, because that's what we did every day. So when Mr. Legal Boot named this sheep Sheer Habit, that put a big smile on my face for sure. So that was all the way back in August 19th. Boy, how time flies. Alrighty. And this is an interesting one. All of a sudden, a character emerged by the name of Head Sheep. And Head Sheep was very upset at what was perceived to be going on in our Minecraft world here. Head Sheep, of course, does not like any sacrifice. Head Sheep considers itself to be the head of all sheep. So Head Sheep's goal oftentimes seems to be to save as many sheep as possible. And here is an example of that. Head Sheep won this bid at a cool price of 1,900 minutes. And there was a big break here, if you can tell, in between. There was a whole month in between the last one and this one. This was all the way back on September 21st, 2015. And I think Head Sheep, I don't know if this was a dig at me perhaps, named this sheep Bobby. I don't know if there's any subliminal messaging there, because I think Head Sheep oftentimes does not like what I do here with the sheep when they do get sacrificed. But either way, I do like the name Bobby, so here is the one saved by Head Sheep all the way back at the end of September. Very nice. And you can see that the sheep, the prices of the sheep kind of stayed similar here for a little while. Next one, of course, yes, this one is another example of someone for a very, very long time, through patience and persistence, trying to win a sheep. And this one was done by Rosie Posey. Rosie Posey's been hanging out with us on the live stream for a very long time. And she made it very clear that it was her goal as well to save a sheep, or at least win one. Excuse me, I think Rosie usually does not reveal her intentions until she wins. She just wanted to win a bid, and she tried and tried and tried for a very long time, and we were very happy for Rosie when she was finally able to get one, and it was actually not too bad of a price. Only 1,000 minutes on September 23rd, 2015, and I really do enjoy the name of this one as well. Bobby Sheep. Have you any wool? Yes sir, we have several crates full. So congratulations to Rosie on that one there. Bobby Sheep, I like that. Yes, Mr. Monet saved a sheep once upon a time in October 14th, 2015, and this was a very amusing turn of events here. The price not too bad at 1,350 minutes, and back when prices were still pretty low. I'm surprised to see all these low prices. They did kind of skyrocket at some point. But Monet had mentioned to me that he had a very big ritual he wanted me to perform. He wanted me to, I think, give the sheep its last meal, trim the sheep of its wool, which I think is where that all started. We always usually do that now. Do all of these things to make it very ritualistic. And he was leading me to believe, that this all was going to lead to a grand sacrifice. And he had me go through several steps. Do A, B, and C, and we were honoring his wishes until the very last moment when he said, and then, sanctuary that sheep, Bobby. And it was like a whole turn of events, and like, we're like, are you kidding me? Like, every piece of the ritual was making it seem as if this sheep was just moments away from being sacrificed, and at the last minute, Monet fooled us all. And that, of course, is why he decided to name this one the Golden Troll. Because he did troll us very, very lightly and in not a bad way, but the name still fits, and of course golden because of maybe perhaps this lovely yellow. I'm not sure if that's a coincidence or not, but yes, well, I'll never forget that Golden Troll by Mr. S.S. Monet all the way back in October 14th. That was a very good one. Look at this one. This is an interesting one. This one has been saved by the Time Participant, one of the people that oftentimes helps me out with the channel, and oftentimes runs Bobby G Trivia and more countless things behind the scenes than I can even list out right now. But the Time Participant threw his hat into the ring on the sheep bidding, and all the way back on October 26, 2015, just a mere few days before Halloween. And this was not a bad price either. For 1,606 minutes, the Time Participant got this lovely white sheep here. And of course, this is one of my favorite names. The name of it here, as you can see, is Press F to Pay Respect. And I don't even know where that came from. It's some kind of meme on streaming websites, on maybe the internet in general, where as soon as something happens and you should quote-unquote pay respect, somehow the letter F was chosen to show that your thoughts and prayers are with something at that time. And whenever a sheep usually gets sacrificed, which goes on behind us here, I'll oftentimes say, as a bit of a joke, but now it's become a thing, please press F to pay respects. And all the fine individuals in the chat room will be pressing F, and I really do get some enjoyment out of that. But either way, Time Participant, of course, picked up on this activity and decided to name this one Press F to Pay Respect. Very nice. Look at this one. This was an interesting day. I might not have the details of this quite right, but I do remember that Head Sheep and Fred Happens, who we haven't seen on this side of the room yet. We haven't seen Fred Happens' name yet on the Sanctuary side. There's a reason for that we'll get to later. But I believe this this name here, Fred Didn't Happen, the name of this lovely sheep here, was all because probably Fred Happens and Head Sheep were involved in a bidding war in the channel. The bidding war usually lasts most of the stream, so they were going back and forth, seeing who could outdo the other minute-wise, and it seems as if, to Head Sheep's pleasure, Head Sheep managed to save this little guy for a cool price of $1,800. Not too bad. This, of course, was on October 29th, 2015, oh so close to Halloween, and as a little rib into Fred's mindset, perhaps, the name of this sheep was Fred Didn't Happen. And I do believe that Fred Happens made his intentions clear, that he was going to sacrifice had he won this bid, but Head Sheep prevented it from happening, and of course, there so said that Fred Didn't Happen. So a very clever name there by Head Sheep. So close to Halloween. Ah, here is another good one by the GBO Gamer. This is, I think, at least the second time that he has made an appearance on the Sanctuary wall. This was a nice price of 2,000 minutes, not too bad at all, and this was on October 30th, 2015, of course, Halloween Eve, one day before Halloween. So, of course, GBO so cleverly named this particular lovely little white sheep Hallow Evie. And I do enjoy that one very much. And the GBO is always good for a clever name. So many people here are always good for a clever name. Moving on to, yes, another one by Mr. Benji. And at the time, I do believe that this was the most expensive sheep at that time. This was the very first time that the price, as you can see, of 4,000 minutes had been breached. It was a very interesting and monumental occasion. And Mr. Benji is always a high roller in many regards, and he had put no thought into how much this would cost. He just made sure he won the bid, and 4,000 minutes made history. It was a lot of minutes, and that, of course, was back on November 4th, 2015. The name here is an interesting one. Mr. Benji and I, of course, chat oftentimes outside of the live stream. And one time he happened to be streaming, and a couple people were talking about several different tennis players, and I had just decided to find out the name of a tennis player that started with the name Jeff. And I had never even heard of Jeff Tarango before, quite honestly. But the first person that popped up when I searched for tennis players named Jeff was Jeff Tarango. And of course, I took that ball and I ran with it. Everything was about Jeff Tarango, how great of a player he was, how he's the best person, how he's my role model. I really just made a mockery out of the poor guy. I don't even know anything about him. But, of course, Mr. Benji remembered that and came on up and on. Let me just rearrange my windows here. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. And so when Mr. Benji decided to make history with a 4,000-minute bid, then, of course, Jeff Tarango happened to be the perfect name. So that was a very funny one in my memory, for sure. All the way back on November 4th. And yes, this is a very interesting one for similar reasons. Of course, this one here is saved by J15 Flight, our good buddy J15, and he made history in a sense. His price tied the most expensive purchase just previous by Mr. Benji at 4,000 minutes, which is monumental in of itself. But the way that J15 did this was extra special. I don't remember the details exactly, but I do think at this moment in time, J15 had only been spending his precious time with us for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. A very short amount of time, all things considered. So I will always remember this one for not only tying the most expensive sheep ever purchased, but he did it in such a short amount of time that it was the quickest, and I think will be forever the quickest, first day hanging out with us to most expensive sheep bid in history. Like, I don't see how anyone could top the way J15 did it. And that's what I always remember about this one. Let me take a quick sip of tea. And of course, I do enjoy the name here, Flight's Promise. I never asked J15 too specifically what the flight in J15 Flight is all about, but seemingly it's important to him because he named this lovely little sheep after himself in a way, Flight's Promise. I really do like that name, even if I'm not 100% sure of its meaning. And that was all the way back on November 5th, 2015. So, very good, J15, tying 4,000 minutes, the most expensive sheep, and doing it so quickly. I'll never forget that. Ah, yes, and here is another lovely little sheep by SS Manet. I think another record breaker at its time. As you'll notice here, Mr. Manet had put up a bid of 5,000 minutes, and that was no joke, and it still is no joke today. It's actually only about a week or two ago. So I remember Mr. Manet put up a very expensive bid. This was the new record-setting bid, I believe, for most expensive sheep. And this one happened to be named Azure Sanctuary, which I spoke to him later about. I said, what does Azure Sanctuary mean exactly? I didn't quite get the reference. And he reminded me of our golden days of playing Diablo 1 and how the shrines in Diablo 1, I think one of them was named Azure Sanctuary. And we had a good recollection about how the shrines back in Diablo 1 were not always beneficial. You had to really be careful what you clicked on back in that game. And that was just an enjoyable recollection of games years past. And that one was back on 11/16/2015. As I'm making this date on this video rather, I'm making on November 24th. We're getting up to the end of the sanctuary sheep here. Not too long ago, some of these have taken place. So let's move on. And look at this, another one by GBO Gamer. Not too shabby, GBO. I think this is the third sanctuary sheep by GBO, so you can kind of start to become familiar with how good of a guy GBO is. He spent a lot of time and a lot of minutes to ensure the sanctuary would be somewhere where a lot of sheep can go. This one happened to be on November 18th, 2015, and the price here was $53.64. Another probably record-setting bid at that time, at least for sanctuary sheep, outdoing Mr. Manet a couple days prior by about 300 or so. And this one was named Survival Plier. And I don't really recall exactly what was going on here. I think this was a mixture of the name Survival Lady 17, who is another person that always is happy to be hanging out and spending time with us. And I think Mark Plier, who is a Minecraft YouTuber, I'm fairly certain. And I think GBO decided to combine their names. And I don't really remember a whole lot about this one, except for the fact that we may had to have given GBO a rain check for this one, because he had won the bid. But he may have had to go to sleep because, of course, he's a couple hours ahead of us, so we ended the stream quite late for him. And that is the only real memory I have about this one. I think we had to ask GBO the day after, hey GBO, you won. What did you want to do with that sheep? Okay, and here we have a very interesting one on November 19th, 2015, a mere 5 days ago. This one was saved by Rosie Posey, who ever since her first sanctuary sheep was extremely dedicated to winning another bid. She certainly made it clear that that was her intention, and she had spent a lot of time trying, but ultimately not quite getting it, until one day, Guy Chicago, in his utter generosity, donated a lot of minutes to Rosie Posey's cause. I believe it was her and Witted Games that were going back and forth, raising the bid, and basically making history because of it. Because as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this, I think, was the most expensive sheep to date, whether it's sacrificed or sanctuary, at 9,001 minutes. I mean, talk about incredible. And Rosie, in her, to pay respects to how she was able to win this bid, decided to name this sheep Guy My Chicago. Guy My Chicago, of course, with the word my in between the words there, is something that we've kind of been saying on our channel, putting the word my in between things. It's kind of a long story that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, But since Guy Chicago was nice enough to give Rosie a whole bunch of minutes in order for her to win this bid, Rosie paid back the favor as best she could by naming this little red sheep here in honor of Guy Chicago. That was a very, very interesting day. Very interesting day. 9,001 minutes. That is no joke. And alright, and we're all the way up to just yesterday. This was a very interesting situation because our buddy Legal Boot happened to win another bid, but this time it wasn't quite a bid actually. We tried something different. We had a raffle, and the way that the raffle worked was that you would spend minutes on purchasing tickets. And you had the tickets, and you basically threw all of the tickets at the end of the night into a big bowl, and then you pulled out one, and the one was the winner. The intention here, of course, was to give anybody a chance to win a sheep, even if they didn't have a whole ton of minutes. So, theoretically, if you only bought one ticket, you could still win. As we can see here on one of the signs, Legal Boot ended up spending 2,000 of his own minutes to purchase 10 tickets at 200 apiece. When the drawing closed, Mr. Legal Boot was the lucky winner. And, of course, like I mentioned, that was only yesterday, 11/23/2015. And he decided, I enjoyed this one as well, this is a very clever name. He decided to name this one #save. So congratulations to Mr. Legal Boot. He was very, very excited. I do remember, it was only yesterday, that he was extremely excited at the fact that he was able to win the very first raffle. So very, very good. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that is as far as we have so far on the Sanctuary side. We've built out our Hall of Recollection pretty far in hopes that we'll be able to definitely, fill up more slots as time goes on. And I think this is going to be a perfect place to take a break. I'm going to stop the video and fire up another one, and the other video will be the other side here, of course. The side where, well, things don't go quite as well for our lovely sheep as they did on the Sanctuary side. So I will be right back, guys, just one second, and we can see part 2. Stay tuned.